As time goes on, we're meant to be getting smarter in general as a human race, and as technology advances and education advances, not just in the Western world but all around the world, it's quite a primitive way of thinking to believe that the colour of somebody's skin can determine the way they think or the way they act or have any negative impact on the way they live their life. Science is advancing every day, and we know literally that the colour of a person's skin is caused by a chemical called melanin, and the only reason why somebody's skin is darker is because their parents or ancestors were born in a part of the world where there's more sun. And the darker somebody's skin is, the more protection it gives you against sunlight. But over the last year, would you say that racism has increased or decreased? I mean, racism, it's such a primitive way of thinking, but over the last year, we've been exposed to it through the mainstream media constantly, every day on the news, and now through sport. But why? Why would people be getting more racist as time goes on and we start to advance? What's the biggest thing what's happened in the last year? Obviously, I don't have to ask you that question. We all know what happened with the pandemic. Now, with the pandemic, a lot of liberties was taken. You wasn't allowed to go and see your family. You couldn't go to places of worship. Some people couldn't go to work. If you're self-employed, you was not making any money, relying on government handouts. It was almost very similar to the way a communist society lives, where everything is state controlled. Now, this was a massive risk from the 1%, and they knew it was going to be hard to pull off because in the past, there have been revolutions. For example, the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution, and even in England, a man called Oliver Cromwell led a revolution against the monarchy. And they were all done in conditions where the average working man wasn't happy with the state of life. Kind of what's gone on over the last year with people not being able to earn what they want, own what they want, or live how they want to live. And you'll see an increase with the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. Now, the people back then, in some of these cases, it ended up with people's heads getting chopped off. That was the reality of it. And men back then, their brains are no different, or women, their brains are not different to how our brains are now. So it was a very risky maneuver to pull off because all it takes is one action for someone to do something stupid in a crowd, which can spiral out of control. So when things started to brew last year, shortly after the lockdown was imposed, we seen the murder of a man called George Floyd, and everybody knew it was clear murder. Whether you class it as third degree, second degree, it doesn't really matter. His life was taken on camera, and it was unjust, and it's happened throughout American history. Only this time somebody caught it on camera. So everybody's got a right to be pissed off at what happened. But then shortly after that, you would see on the news other examples of racism. You'd see it through Facebook, you'll see it through YouTube. Any kind of media outlet would have a massive focus on racism. And my argument is, let's say if you're a 9-year-old kid and you wake up and you have no concept of racism, you turn on the news or your parents are watching the news, and all you can hear is you can actually hear the terms at 9 o'clock in the morning of what racist people are saying to people from ethnic minorities. Now, before the, before the morning, you never knew what racism was. But now you're going to school with it in your mind, and the very fact that you know it existed, or you now know it exists, almost gives you a reason to think that way. Like if you look at Roman history, at one point, I think one third of their population was in slavery. But it didn't matter what colour your skin was because racism didn't exist. It wasn't a concept. They were just bastards. They just enslaved a lot of people. Maybe the only people they was racist to is the Persians, and that's because they were their enemies. So it was only natural for their media at the time or propaganda to set you up to be racist against them. But then you think, well, okay, I'll turn off the news. I can't be today. This racism is bad, but I want to watch some sports. So you turn on Sky Sports News, and all you would hear now is somebody being racist to this footballer, has been racist to that footballer. But this could be a 15-year-old, 14-year-old kid saying something stupid, being racist, and why are they taking it to heart? Just don't even read the comments. I mean, there's 8 billion people in this world, and to think that there's going to be no racism it's stupid. It's going to exist, so I don't really know how you defeat racism if it's already built in the mind and it already exists. It's a very difficult thing to stamp out, especially from like a 60-year-old bloke whose family might have been a little bit racist, and it's kind of stemmed through his generation. Him watching the news in the morning or watching people kneel down in a football game, how is that going to change his mind? Because prevention is better than the cause. If you try and cure something what's incurable, in some ways you're only going to make it worse. Because going back to my example, if you are a white man and yeah, you understand that racism is bad, you wake up in the morning, you're on your way to work, you turn on the TV, that's all you hear. You turn on Sky Sports News, you want to take your mind away from it, it's on again. You get in your car, you go to work, you switch your radio on, bang, it's in your face again, or in your ears at least. You turn on your phone, it's being recommended through the mainstream media. Now the question is, why has it been pushed through so much in the last year? But before that, the focus from the news, it was never really on that as much. And I truly believe that it was because of the risks of what people could have done when there was protesting against the pandemic. So instead of people being out there and they want to, I don't know, if they thought that maybe there should be a referendum on if a lockdown should be imposed, if the government should even be able to impose that kind of those kind of restrictions against the way we live their life. Instead, there were people on the streets protesting against racism. Some people got offended, and then some right-wing groups were made even more powerful because it pissed them off. Like the man who is going to work in the morning was not even thinking about racism, but now he's having a conversation about it. It's in his mind, and it's almost increased the existence in his mind. I went to town once on a night out. This is just before the second lockdown happened, and there was this drunk Asian guy, and he was saying, "Well, what about Asian lives matters? Our lives matters too." I'm like, "Mate, I don't really give a shit. I came out here for a drink." But that was all done through the media, and whether this racism has increased is it's a different matter. Or has our exposure just increased to it, and the media makes us think about it even more. But what could have happened during these lockdowns is the same thing what could have happened in the past through other revolutions where governments have been brought down by their own communities. But my point is, I believe that we have been pitted off against each other in order to, for the 1% to protect themselves. They're probably sitting back laughing when we're fighting amongst ourselves, when they're getting away with taking a lot of our liberties, and our attention's been completely distracted away from it. Now, if you look at in history, one of the main ways you can bring a community down is to divide and conquer. So if you look at conflicts, I don't know, like if you look at the Ireland conflict when Ireland got split up, Ireland were fighting, Protestants versus Catholics were fighting each other, but their views are so similar, and thousands of people have died over that because one group believes in saints, and goes and takes the communion, whereas the other group doesn't. But they both believe in the same God, and 99% of the things they believe in are the same, but they're willing to kill each other because of that. If you look at what happens in Iran with the different sets of Muslims killing each other, again, because of certain minute beliefs which differ, but 99% of what they believe in is the same, but they're willing to kill each other whilst other nations step into the country and take over the country. It was even done in India when there was an Indian revolution with their own people again killing each other. If you look throughout history, when a big nation goes and invades a smaller nation, it normally starts off with a breakdown of their own people. And how are these rumours started? Why is the conflict started first of all? This is a question what I think people need to be asking themselves, because we've been played as fools really in the last year. And I know people have been going out there protesting against the lockdowns and everything what was taken away from us. But imagine one people or one nation all united against one cause. But unfortunately, we are meant to be getting smarter as a human race, but sometimes you just look and we're going backwards. I mean, I saw the verdict on the man who killed George Floyd yesterday. You look at YouTube and, some videos have got 3,000 likes to 1,000 dislikes, and a lot of cynical people on there are saying, we all knew what the verdict was going to be, and it's not third degree murder. It's like, who cares? It's like, everyone's seen the video. If that was your dad, if that was your brother or your son, you'll be pissed off. It doesn't matter what colour you are. Killing is killing, and justice was done through the court. But people are still playing the division game. But I think it was a good thing that we're coming out of it now. But I almost feel like we've been experimented on, and we need to really, step our game up, and as a human race, and start thinking like they think, because it has been proven in the past that when you make two groups of people, they automatically have a conflict. There was an old psychology study called the Robber's Cave, and all they did is get a group of kids, and I think they grouped some of them in blue and some of them in red. That's all they did. Said one have a blue badge, one have a red badge, and over the next couple of days they just started fighting through no reason, just because one of them had a blue badge, one of them had a red badge. Didn't matter what colour they were, it was just the fact there were two groups. So there's almost like an innate primal instinct to go against anybody who's not different in terms of colour, but different in the way they're grouped. So the whole point I'm trying to make is, fuck racism. Like, get it out your mind, because if I go up to, I'm half black and I'm half white, but I class that as it's being its own race itself. Now, if I go up to a white person and I say something racist, it's almost unthinkable because it won't offend them because in the back of their mind, it's like, yeah, but I'm white, you can't really be racist to me. And some people might disagree with me, and that's alright. That's why I'm making this kind of video because disagreeing is good and talking about it is good. If you can say, you know what, I might be wrong, that is a good trait to have. But if we look in school, or you think back to when you was in school, you look around the playground, and instinctively you will see different races hanging around with each other, and that's where it starts, I believe, with this cure against racism. It's the way people interact together, because with that study on the Robbers Cave, the conclusion they came to is, yeah, grouping people against each other, it does create conflict, but the best way to avoid the conflict is by giving them a task where they will succeed, because when they both succeed, they become joined. But it seems like the 1% have used that against us because of the dangers what we could have inflicted because of the liberties taken during the pandemic. Let me know what you think.